Welcome to the AACtion podcast, where we empower communication partners to feel confident with AAC. I am Lauren Greenleaf, a certified speech-language pathologist with nearly a decade of experience in AAC. Join us weekly as we dive into all of the aspects of AAC and hear from communication partners just like you who are successfully integrating AAC into their daily lives. Whether you are an SLP, a parent, an educator, or any other communication partner, you are absolutely in the right place if you are ready to take actionable steps towards AAC success today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week on the AACtion podcast. This week, I am here with Shelley, and she is a music therapist who also does a lot of AAC in her music therapy. Her and I have had the pleasure of working together on some virtual AAC evals, and I'm really excited to have her here to talk with us. So, Shelley, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started by telling everybody a little bit about yourself and how a music therapist came into AAC.
Yeah, so I'm a music therapist, and I knew that is what I wanted to do since I was a sophomore in high school. I thought about being an early childhood instructor, and I was told that I wasn't going to make really great money in that, and I should probably look at something different. So I eventually found the path of music therapy and was like, this is it. I love it. So it really wasn't until my internship that I heard about AAC, saw an AAC device, knew that it even existed. So my internship was 6 months long. That's how most of them are for music therapy. And it's after 4 years of school. And I got there and asked my supervisor, like, hey, what is this? What does this person have? And she's like, oh, I don't really know. Like, it kind of helps them talk. And I was like, whoa, don't we think that's a problem? Like, what do you mean you don't know what it is? So that is when I decided my final project for internship would be based on AAC, and was really my first like deep dive into what is this? How do people get it? How am I supposed to use it in sessions? And while I learned a lot, there's still, and like all my researching was not anything about best practice or like really how I should be using it as a music therapist. So I was just kind of using my best educated guess to figure it out, which was good and hard all at the same time. So after internship, I really didn't see another AAC device for a little bit. I had one on my caseload that I worked with best I could. But then just naturally, I got more AAC users on my caseload, and I was like, okay, it's time to like deep dive this again. So I looked into it, and all roads led to speech therapy. And so I started researching speech therapy, and I was like, I can be a speech therapist. This sounds great. I like enjoy it. I like the kids. I want to help people. I can do this. And then the programs were not part-time enough for me. Yes, I love my job. I'm not willing to give up the people I work with. I'm not willing to give up the company I work for. So I started contacting speech therapists to be like, hi, what do I do? Anybody have ideas? And somebody told me to look into assistive technology and AAC certification. She's like, you don't need it, but it is going to give you all the information you're looking for to be able to like work with it more. So that's what I did. And it was incredible. I loved all of it.
I love it. I hear that question a lot of like where to get an AT certificate or where to get the AAC certificate. I got an AT certificate from Bowling Green, almost 5 years ago now. Where did you get your AT certificate from?
Yeah, my AT certificate was from San Francisco Dominguez Hills, and it was all online.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've heard of that one. That one's come up in my research too. But I know people ask about that every once in a while, so I figure we might as well give them some options.
Yeah. I really liked it. It's very learn at your own pace though. So like you have, it is a semester you're doing it for. You do have deadlines on things weekly, but it's not very like teacher interactive. You don't have live classes. It's here's the material, get what you can from it and move on. So if you're not that kind of learner, I don't recommend that program.
Gotcha. And did it cover AAC pretty extensively, or was it more of like an intro? Because my AT class like had communication support in there, but it was general AT more than anything.
It was more general AT. We had a section on communication, but it was more, how do I mount it? How do I assess somebody for it?
Okay.
So I ended up then looking into an AAC specific one.
Okay.
And that one was really good. It was with Gloria Soto and I hope they don't listen. Name's escaping me.
We'll put it in the show notes for you guys.
We'll put it in the show notes. Yep. It started coming out of my mouth. I was like, oh dear. It was really good. It was all online, and unfortunately it was the last, fortunately for me, unfortunately now, the last semester they were offering it online. Okay. So you then have to be in person.
Okay. Well, we'll still put it in the show notes for anybody that happens to be around that area and can do it in person. But I think you have such a unique journey into AAC, and I applaud you for being a professional out there that wasn't well versed in AAC and was like, this is something I should know about. I should know what to do with this because I see this kid and it's a form of his communication. So I think so often we do work with other professionals that aren't well versed in AAC. And if we're not taking the initiative to reach out, rarely are they taking the initiative to reach out to us too. And that's not helpful to the kid in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's one of my main missions right now in AAC work is getting other professionals familiar with AAC and getting them to really see the reason they need to know about it. And we talk about, you don't have to know all the things that we know as higher level thinkers in AAC, been around with it. But I do want people to feel comfortable in being like, I think AAC would be appropriate for you. Here's some resources. Here's why I think that. Because I think there are so many people out there, so many families that don't even know it's an option. And then they get it and they're like, dang, where was this 5 years ago? And I'm like, I know, we're trying. So I really want professionals to feel empowered to advocate for it, even if they're not the ones who have the resources, and for families to feel confident in asking for it and asking for resources to get AAC.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. And it's one of my life missions that once they do understand that they need it, so you're doing the pre-work for me. Once they do understand they need it, once you have it, where do you go from there? Because that's the other thing. Even you said, I dug deep, so then I didn't find everything I was looking for. So then I had to go back and dig even deeper. And I want people to be able to come to a place where they can get their answers. They can hear other people in everyday lives. This is how I'm using it. This is how you could try to use it. This is a tip I have for you, which is really the whole reason I started this podcast in general, was that you had a place to go to listen to other people that aren't necessarily experts. I don't even consider myself an expert. I'm still learning something new every day. I can guarantee you're going to teach me something today. So this is what it looks like in my everyday life. And also kind of shedding light on the fact that it doesn't always have to be this cookie cutter version that we see in the social media world, because it's not always that perfect, I'm going to model without expectation all day long, every day. And then the kid's going to talk and we're going to be great and we're going to move on. There's so much more nuance to it. And I think when we get to have these chats, you get to see more of that nuance.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's dive into the music piece, because that's what everybody wants to hear about. So can you first start by telling us a little bit about the benefits of music therapy and what that can look like, that therapy style can look like, especially for those of us that are SLPs listening or parents listening that really aren't familiar necessarily with that model?
Yeah. So I typically don't use our professional definition, because then you got to break it all down. I really like to think about music therapy in we are using music to work on non-musical goals. So differentiate us from music educators in that way is education is great and so beneficial, but they have different goals. They are working more towards like perfecting some skills and learning about the music, composers, how music is done, play a little bit of it. And I may touch some of those areas, but that's not my main goal. So they may teach piano lessons for the sake of learning, and there's so many good things in that. I might do piano lessons within therapy to target fine motor skills for finger isolation, attention to task. You have to like pay attention to be able to finish a whole song. Learning to read music is hard. You are reading dots on a page. What does that even mean? So, like we're trained in adapting it. I can do it by colors, by letters, by numbers, by pictures. We adapt it to that person's abilities so that it's still success-based, but that also requires some frustration tolerance to have me correct you and have the song not sound how you wanted it to. So we have to do it again. And those are the things I'm targeting rather than playing the piece perfectly.
Ooh, so interesting. Yeah, see, you already taught me something. I knew you would. That is really cool and such a clear definition, like using music to work on non-musical, like really, to me, paints the perfect picture of that. Now, I know you and I talked beforehand that like not every session looks the same. So could you just give us some examples? Like the piano one's perfect. So what are some other things that we could see in therapy?
Yeah, we have a pretty broad scope of practice. So incoming parents were wondering, I kind of tell them like, wave a magic wand, what can we address? And to a point, most of the time we can, or we can at least incorporate it into sessions. But some kind of overarching goal areas are motor skills. We talked about attention to task, emotional regulation, communication, one of my favorites, social skills, self-image, independence. And what those look like in each session really depends on the client in front of us. So if the music isn't motivating, music therapy is not going to work. So I'm not bringing in random songs. They're all like specifically picked for the person I'm working with. If they love Disney, I'm going to use a lot of Disney music because that is going to be what they connect with, what we can build rapport with, what they're going to be motivated by. So we really use that as our force to kind of move forward. So if I'm working on extending attention or that attention to task, extending engagement back and forth with me, then I might use one of their favorite songs. And instead of just ending the song where the recording would, I might change the music a little bit, and instead of ending how it sounds it should end, I'll make it go up. If you're musically inclined, 5/7 chord we might use. It goes up, it feels kind of crunchy, it's not finished yet, and then I'll circle back to another part of the song, or I'll add my own verse in, or I'll have them help me add words in to keep that back and forth interaction going. Okay. So live music is one of our best tools because that's a lot of our training is how can I manipulate and change and mold the music to elicit responses, to increase engagement more than you can just playing a recorded song.
Okay. Yeah. And that's one of the things I found most interesting listening to you. And even doing some evaluations with you, you're like, I'm going to play this chord and see if it promotes some more initiation. And I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't even know that was a thing. But it makes so much sense when I like take a step back and actually look at it, that like there are auditory cues essentially that can kind of stimulate the brain to do something differently or to be more interested in something because that's not what it's supposed to sound like. We're supposed to be at the end and that wasn't the end. So that's really, really cool and really unique.
Yeah. I've had like a tune kind of stuck in my head all day. I decorated fall in my house today. So when I do that, my therapist mind starts going, okay, what am I going to start doing in my sessions? And I came up with this chant a while ago that was just on the spot. I needed something else to do at the end of a session. And it's pretty simple. So I think like take this as like something that like listeners can use too. Chants don't have to be hard. But I think it's a good example of how changing the ending shows nope, we're gonna keep going, or like yeah, it stops. So kind of like listen, use your musical ear and listen for that a little bit. But it's pretty simple of just like pat, pat, clap, pat, pat, clap. I'm thankful, I'm thankful, I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful, I'm thankful, I'm thankful for my friends. It's good to see you today. And now it's time to say. If I leave it there, you're all like, for the love of all things happy, finish the song. Yes. And so loop then. I'm thankful, I'm thankful, I'm thankful for my, I don't know, something different. Cat. I'm thankful, I'm thankful, I'm thankful for my cat. It's good to see you today. And now it's time to say, I'm thankful.
And hearing it.
Complete. Yeah. So that's kind of that like that I hit more of a like 5/7 kind of range of like, ooh, it's not gonna end. What are we gonna do next? Kind of feel.
Oh, how cool. I love that. And also such an amazing little chant. Super simple. Like you're right. Anybody could do that. You could pick it up today and try it. Yeah. And then you could make your own and end with that high, or keep it going with the high and end with the like, it was a more direct end. I'm sure there's some formal term for it, but you can hear the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second, because there are probably people listening that are like, I am not musical at all, Shelley. Like, I'm just not musical. I do not consider myself to be the most musical person. Now that I have kids, I like sing more and all that good stuff just because that's what kids like. But I've had piano lessons for a while. I hated practicing. I was a clarinet player a while. Practicing wasn't my thing. Like, it just wasn't something I was overly interested in. So how do us non-musical people tap into that music piece a little bit? Any ideas?
So I think my best piece of kind of unhelpful advice is to just do it.
Okay.
The more you just do it, the more comfortable it becomes. Start with what you know. If you know the wheels on the bus best, then you start with the wheels on the bus with an appropriate client. Maybe we don't do that with someone who hates that song, but all within appropriate context. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you are. And remembering that specifically, if they're not here for music therapy, they're not here for your musical ability. They're here for connection. They're here for engagement. They're here to be with you. And that connection piece is what you're facilitating there. So if they love Let It Go, then especially if you're trying to enhance like learning of the device and some of those core words, then you can let them do half of the singing for you with the device of let it, and they press go, let it go, can't hold it back anymore, let it go. And so you're getting these repeated words that is not drill and kill. It's motivating because they're helping you sing the song. And with that, because they're helping, it's already going to sound different than the original. Yeah. And they're just excited that you're using things with the like with them, things that they enjoy. Or
I love that.
Yeah,
I think that's great, because honestly, sometimes there isn't like it. You just need to do it, and that's how I feel a lot about AAC in general. Like, you got to get started with it for you to start feeling more confident with it. So it's the same thing with the music piece. Like, you just got to start doing it and you'll feel better. So you started to give us one idea of how we can incorporate this AAC device into these more musical sessions. So what are some other thoughts that you might have on that?
Yeah, so things that I do is a lot of singing, and I like, y'all can do this too. Even if they're quick, you can do it with recorded music, but it moves. So kind of pick their level and your ability to model. But I make AAC sheets where it has all of the words in the song I can say with the device and the motor plan how to get there. And some of them have it like typed out. Some of them I need the pictures to cue me. It depends on how familiar with the system I am. Sometimes it's just an underlined word in my like sheet music I'm playing off of that cues me to, oh yeah, we're targeting this word right now. Oh yeah, this would be good. So a lot of singing in music therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have started writing music videos with somebody. So she loves it. And this is a really easy way to be able to use the recorded music and get more conversations within during contacts with your parent or SLP or another therapist of like, who's going to be in it? What props do we need? What are your lines? How are we going to break out into song and dance here? Are you dancing? Is this person brings, it's all High School Musical all the time right now. So she brings like Gabriella dolls. Are Troy and Gabriella dancing? Like, what is this? And she has to like lay it out and explain it to us in a way that is not all nouns. She's very noun heavy right now. So okay, yes, I understand Troy and Gabriella, but what are they going to do? Find your action words. Here we go. What does this look like? And it gets more of a conversation going. And then you just record it with your phone and recorded music, and presto, you got a music video.
What a cool idea. And talk about like child-led, interest-based, like I have so many kids that are very interested in music, and although none of them currently would be at the level of creating a music video, but all of those other ideas are great. And I love the simplicity of saying, oh, we're targeting like these 3 words and underlying them so you remind yourself, because that's half the battle, to even model it and show it. And I think that's really cool. It's a great strategy and really helpful.
Yeah. I very much am leaning more and more into the child-led practice. The longer I'm a therapist, the longer or like more heavy I'm leaning into that side. And it's just, in my mind, it's better for everybody because then I don't feel stuck by like a session plan and I can follow where they're going. And I find personally more spontaneous language happening because I'm letting them do their thing.
Yeah. And that's definitely the theme for me. I feel like when we're in their world, we're building that connection and we're building that spontaneity in communication versus creating these expectations that we have of certain communication that just might not be what they're interested in. When you do when you do listen to like recorded audio, do you ever put it down at like 0.75 so that you can model a little bit better? I've seen people do that.
I don't personally, because if I need it slower, I'm just going to play it myself.
That makes sense.
But there was one time that I needed to slow it down significantly because somebody was learning to play a like drum part the way it is in the song. And it distorted the music so badly that we then couldn't even follow it. But I would try that, maybe try it outside of the session and see how the song sounds. If it still has the song quality of it, I'd say go for it. Press pause on your phone too. If they're really like hunting for something, pause it and then keep going is another good strategy.
Okay. Yeah, no, those are really helpful because I think a lot of the really popular songs, I'm thinking like some of like the super simple songs and some of the like really young kids, ironically, are all like really quick. Like, so if you're not singing it yourself, like you can make the wheels on the bus as slow as you need to do because you're singing it. Or Twinkle Twinkle is a really popular one in my house right now, but like you could make those slower. But some of those other ones are harder to make slower. So I've seen that strategy, but that makes a lot of sense, making sure it doesn't distort the actual quality of the song in the process.
Yeah, I think if it starts to distort it, it becomes more of a distraction than a motivator because they're like, I hear the song, but it's not the same, but it's coming out of your phone. So what's happening here?
Yeah. Okay. Any other kind of thoughts on how can we use AAC with making music, not necessarily the song piece? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you can have AAC be directive. So they can, now we're going to do freeze dance. They can pick out the different actions, or maybe they're the controllers of the freeze and they freeze and then have to tell you to jump, and then they push play and then freeze and now you're going to spin. So it works on some of those action words, or you can do it together. I think another really great way is, especially if they're really loving music and music therapy isn't an option for whatever reason, then you can talk about songs, and maybe you don't load all of their favorite music choices on there. I typically do. I'll change a button. So like the word songs, I have it programmed to open up a new page because of the whole principle of what we're doing in my sessions. But there's a really great descriptive teaching part into that too. So like Frozen is not under songs because the word Frozen is already within a lot of systems. So finding different ways, like Lion King, maybe they can't find the word king, so let's use descriptive teaching to talk about the song that they want in a different way. And then that would lead itself well if you're like, I hear you, I got to do it, but I am so not singing in my sessions. I hear you, but if you're not, that's okay. Then that leads well to, like, we had this language rich piece of teaching AAC strategies. And then as the motivator, we're going to listen to the song afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I love that you tied that in there. Because I think descriptive teaching is very much a prominent strategy in the AAC field. That being said, I don't feel like it's a very generally known best practice. Like I don't feel like we talk about it enough. I think from a social media world, we focus so much on the modeling and the decrease of demand and using it all day long that we sometimes forget to talk about some of the strategies that really can help kids find new words. So like Shelley said, essentially descriptive teaching is taking a word like king, and maybe we can't find it in the system, but we know it's a man, and we can find the word man, and we know he wears a crown, and there's crown in the system, and the communication partner can put those pieces together and say, oh, you're talking about the king, and you said lion, so let's listen to Lion King. I think that's a really, really important addition to that.
Yeah.
So thinking too, so we know you're a music therapist. What has your kind of collaboration with speech therapists looked like in the past? Because it doesn't have to be all of us in a silo. We can all work together. And I know you have collaborated with speech therapists in the past. Can you, whether AAC or not AAC related, kind of shed some light on what that looked like for you?
Yeah. It's gone really well, and it's gone really poorly, if I'm honest. So I think the thing good to know is, like, SLPs don't have a monopoly on communication, and music therapists do not have a monopoly on music. We can both use it. There's a lot to be said for staying in our lane, and there's a lot to be said that there's a lot of crossover. So when it's going really well, it's been so cool. So one non-AAC related was, we were really targeting his speech, and he was growing, but it was very context dependent. He would only do it within speech therapy. So I went and observed a session, and in the session he was whispering. We're like, I don't know why he's whispering right now. Like, that's not normal for him. And she's like, it's happening for like a month now that he'll only whisper these words with me. And so I was like, well, I'm big, bold, loud. Here we go. And something as easy as like throw your hands up is kind of like a musical cue that he and I had used before, like, woo, big. Then I threw my hands up and like sang the word. And then he did it too. She's like, oh, snap. That's so easy. So she used that like cue that we'd been doing in music therapy for like, play big, play big, play big. It was just her hands in the air. As she made herself bigger, he got louder. And that was really cool. And then on the flip side, she gave me apraxia cards and told me exactly how to do it, exactly where to start, because that's not in my training at all. So like, it was very much, you can do this don't move on until I tell you to, which is appreciated. And then I put it into a song that was a short 5 minutes of our session every time, and then targeted it with him. And then we'd move on, and she'd tell me when to increase to the next level, and we'd do that. So I thought that was a really cool way of kind of meshing our worlds together within a really supported context, because I was dipping into her lane a little bit. I was told how to do it and what not to do too.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because apraxia therapy in general is very specific. But that important note that you made at the beginning, it doesn't have to be just the speech therapist working on communication. Communication happens all day, everywhere. Everyone who is on that team should be involved in that communication piece. And personally, I've seen a lot too, where conversations in my office look a lot different than conversations at home, and they look a lot different than conversations in music therapy. So when I'm heavily focused on just me, I'm missing so much of the picture, and it's just ultimately not supporting the kid in the long run, especially with that AAC implementation, because now we're getting mixed signals from everybody in all the contexts they're in, and that, in my experience, leads to more of that device abandonment and more of that, like, well, if I'm not going to do it right with all of these people, why even bother doing it?
Right. Yeah. I really love knowing what school is targeting with the device, and then what, like, whether it's speech outside of the school or inside the school, like, what are you guys targeting right now? And then I will put those same principles into a song. I'm LAMP certified, and that's something I've really appreciated about the SLP who was supervising me at the time, is would kind of break down some of those like speech terminologies where, like, it's not my goal that I'm targeting them, but I can't target those words within that category, the verbs, the adjectives, the whatevers. The trying to avoid all carrier phrases is not something that I knew to do until a speech therapy told me. So breaking down that kind of language, that then I can pick out songs that are heavy on that. Let It Go says go 2,800 times. Happy says happy 2,800 times, and I can just sing that and they get natural practice with it. Then makes the device use in music therapy, in school, in speech. It starts generalizing it more than just our like little container sessions.
Yeah, so much. Yeah. But I also like listening to you talk about how the music piece can really incorporate. There is such little requesting that's occurring. Like the first 5 examples you gave us were not, I want to listen to Lion King, or I want to listen to Wheels on the Bus. And even when we did talk about that, we were talking about it in the context of using descriptive teaching, not necessarily being like, can they navigate to the song folders and press the one they want? It's so much more conversational. It is so much more generalizable. There's absolutely a time and place for requesting, but it doesn't have to be all the time. And that music piece allows you to kind of take a step back from that requesting piece.
Yeah. I professionally was fortunate enough, it's unfortunate for the child, but it was fortunate learning for me, of I saw I want taken to the extreme, where the only way they knew how to communicate was I want. It was I want before everything that made no sense in the context of the sentence, and to a point they didn't even know what it meant anymore, because they had drilled that into them that everything has to start with I want. And I feel like that was really eye-opening. I find it's kind of one of my missions with music therapists in particular right now is stop focusing on colors, numbers, animals, and I want. I don't want you to touch them again. Here's how you use core words. Here's how you can use things quickly on a system you've never seen before. Use the homepage for robust systems. And use those words first, because I think that's really just what people default to because they don't know better. Like we're all trying our best. We're trying to be helpful, but in that it's always I want, never can I have, or I wish, or I need. Like let's at least wants versus needs. Sometimes you need to go to the bathroom. You don't want to. It's a need right now. So like broadening that out is something I'm really trying to target with the employees in our company and anyone who will come talk to me at all, really.
I love it. And I think it's really cool to talk to you. You and I have talked several times before, but to hear how you took no real background of language, but dug so deep into this AAC world that all of that component of learning language is really coming. And like, you understand, like, there's a reason we don't just look at this and this. And I think an important distinction to make too, for those of you listening that maybe are collaborating with somebody that's not in the professional field that you are in, there's likely a reason that other professionals did what they did to the device. I mean, I know you've seen it and I've seen it, like things come back and you're like, really? Why does it look like this? But typically there was like good-heartedness behind it. It wasn't like they were like, oh, we're going to screw this system up for this kid. We're ready for them not to be able to communicate. Like, no one is going at it that way. And if they are, they shouldn't be working with kids anymore. But that's besides the point. So I think that curiosity of like, why did you change this? Or why are you throwing your hands up in the air? Like, why is this kid coming and throwing his hands up in the air? Like, it's a cue from another professional that was really supportive. And I think we need to be more open-minded about having that conversation versus like shutting it down and saying like, oh, you know what? I know everything about music, so obviously they can't be right because here I am.
Yeah, that collaboration piece has been so cool. I primarily work on the Medicaid waiver for music therapy and AAC, really. But we have team meetings, and it's one of my favorite times is when the whole team is able to be there because they're like, oh yeah, I'm working on positive affirmations and trying new things. And I'm like, bro, I got you. I have a song for that and it's on Spotify. Here you go. Like, try this. And then we come back to the next team meeting and they're like, it's my favorite song now. And now she's like independently saying that I can do things even when it's hard, when she's like walking under tree branches and stepping over things. And we're like, ah. So it's really cool to be able to like share.
Awesome. I have one client right now that we do team meetings every month for, and it should be something that is worked into every therapeutic system.
Yeah.
And I realize for all of you listening who are like, yeah, Lauren, okay. I realize all the barriers to it, but for that reason alone, you just gave us the perfect example. It is so eye-opening and so instantly supportive to be like, oh, you're having trouble with that? Oh, well, here's something that works for me. You don't have to keep struggling. Let's just have this conversation. So that's really cool. All right. So switching gears, or I guess kind of sending everybody in a direction, what are some tips for parents, SLPs that really want to focus on this AAC implementation piece, but bring more music into that life?
Yeah. As we said, one, just do it. Take the leap of faith and just do it. It's easier, I think, when you don't have people watching you. So if you don't have a student observer or parents aren't watching that day or whatever, it's easier. So I'll own that even as a music therapist first. Again, they don't care how we sound. They're looking for connection with us, and it's a really good way to connect with people. There's also musical books. So those are really cool. Like Country Roads has been turned into a book. Pharrell Williams' Happy is a book. Baby Beluga. Like so many things are turned into musical books. The Amazon has a lot of really good ones. Chants are a little bit easier sometimes because you don't have that vocal fluctuation as much. You can just kind of chant the words, and just having that predictable rhythm going can be really nice because if you're keeping the chant consistent, you're cueing at the same time, and they know every time this is going to be their cue word. And then use what you know. So one of the resources I have is a spoof off of 12 Days of Christmas. I turned it to 11 Nights of Halloween. 11 because the system I first made it for didn't have 12 Halloween words on it. It only had 11. I was like, spooky number, I guess. Here we go. But like use what you know. So 11 Nights of Halloween has like a black cat hissing at me, and it has jack-o'-lanterns, and it has haunted houses in it. And you can do that kind of spur of the moment. Maybe you don't have access to Lambords for Life to be able to plan with it and know what's in there, but you can open up I think it's like under the make with the shapes and then holidays, and open up those words and say, okay, on the first night of Halloween, my true love gave to me, and then have them pick. It can be totally up to them what comes first. If you have the memory like I do, write it down as you go, because the song backtracks. But they can then have this super success-based, they get to pick what comes next. It's a tune you're already probably familiar with. It's predictable. Like those ones are stuck in our head around holidays for a reason, because they're predictable. So just like books, songs are not law. You can change them to be what you need them to be.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so what I'm hearing is predictability, going with what you know, and working the language into that, essentially. I mean, there's a lot more that went into that, but like those were the pieces. That predictability really helps keeping that language consistent and manipulating the songs or the books however you need them to be to get your targets in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. This episode was awesome. I'm so excited because I know so many people like the music piece, but are either like intimidated by it or just don't really know how to work with it. And I think you gave us some incredibly tangible action steps for trying it. I've also heard from several people that even just having some basic like shakers or tappers makes music less intimidating, because you're not just like sitting in an open, quiet room singing to yourself. So invest in something that makes noise, whatever that something may be. It could be your pop bottle that you put like something into. It doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah, and I mean, you could make a whole session out of just that. Like, what do we need to do next? Like, you need scissors, and then we're going to cut, and then I need help, and then, where is the rubber band to hold it all together? And now you can make music with, rocks and a water bottle that you, like, drew on.
Yeah. And you know what? When I said it out loud, I didn't even think of, like, duh, that's a session in and of itself. Like, it doesn't have to get complicated. It can be really that simplistic. So, awesome. Do you have any other like ending thoughts you want to share with anybody?
Yeah, I think I'm just excited to get to share with y'all, and that really just do it. And it doesn't have to be hard. We work it up in our minds. Even I do so much bigger than it needs to be, but one like cute little, we could paint a bucket and drum on that can be a whole session in itself and be really, really good motivating therapy.
Yeah. Oh, I have so many ideas even for the coming week. Shelley, where can people find you if they want to follow along with your music and AAC journey?
Yeah, so my business is Notes, the number 2, Live By. I am on Instagram primarily. And then if you're wanting to follow up on resources that I'm making, my full-time job is with Mainstay Music Therapy. So anything I'm kind of creating will be up on Mainstay's website in our shop there. But I share a lot of tips and tricks and ideas on Instagram, so that's a good place to start.
Perfect. We will put all of that in the show notes for everybody. So Shelley, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. That was such an awesome episode. I really love talking to Shelley and working with her also, but also, she provided so much concrete examples and ideas for us to really start to navigate music and communication together. And what I think is really cool is we were talking in the context of AAC. So many of these things can be really useful for communication as a whole, and there's so much benefit to that. So I I'm really excited for you guys to listen, and I would love to hear your feedback. If you want to leave some reviews for the podcast, I would be so grateful. It helps other people find this podcast and listen into. And if you remember, we do have a resource library for the podcast. It's $25 for the entire year. You get a resource after each episode. So really it ends up being like $1 a resource-ish for this 2024 year. And Shelley and I came up with this really great resource for you guys. It's going to have some links to some of the Spotify playlists that she really likes. And it's also going to have some ideas for creating musical instruments, core words you can work on those, and then kind of how to branch off from there. So if you are interested in that, the link is below. And yeah, keep an eye out on the Inspire Connections Therapy Instagram and email list. We have some really exciting things coming for you guys very, very soon. So I will see you guys next week on the Take Action podcast.